Hi everybody, welcome to another Keyboard World live webinar. It's lovely to see so many of you online with us. I really appreciate that. And today's a really special webinar for us because when we first started doing webinars, we did a couple of pre-recorded sessions, and we had a gentleman came down from Korg, and such was the reaction to his webinar. We said we've got to have him back on with us again, and we've chosen to do it live. We've thrown him in at the deep end today. He's trembling in the corner at the moment, but he'll be all right, I'm sure. And yeah, it's good to see we've got the comments on today as well, which is nice. We've managed to work out what the problem was with that. Steve's obviously going to be sharing some hints and tips on the Pa5x, and I've had a little preview, and I know you're going to enjoy this. We also have been very, very kindly sent some goodies by today's sponsor, and that's Korg UK. And we have to thank them at this point for letting us have the services of Steve Hubble today. And also a big thanks to Steve, because he has driven, 3.5 hours to be here. And but we have fed him. We did feed him when he arrived. And he's got to travel that distance home, so we're really, really grateful. But Korg, now I know you're not going to be able to contain your excitement at this point, but they have supplied us actually with some really nice little gifts to give away, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that right at the end of the webinar. But they're in the background here. I'm not going to model it for you, but we have this really nice Korg fleece. It's got the hoodie bit on as well, so if you want to go and intimidate people down the local shopping centre, you can put the hoodie on, and away you go. So that's really nice. We've also got the Korg drinking flask, and all joking aside, this is not plastic. This is really, really good quality. It's metal with a glass lining in it. It's really nice. And we've also got a very nice Korg pen there as well. A nice quality pen. So thanks to them for sending that, and we'll tell you how you can get your hands on those a little bit later on. But I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to leave you with the main man for today. I'll be sitting behind the cameras. I will monitor the comments. Obviously, Steve's got a set plan of what to do today. But if I see any comments come in that are relevant, I'll pass the comment on to Steve, and we'll see if we can cover it for you. So without further ado, I'm going to leave you for the next hour or so in the very capable hands of the gentleman from Korg UK, Mr. Steve Hubble. Come on, Steve.
Thank you very much, Paul.
That's all right.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's great to be back here again at Keyboard World headquarters. So thank you for inviting me back. I have been very well looked after. I've been fed and watered, which is really good. So thank you for that. So yes, great to be back. Nice to see everybody at home as well. Thank you very much for coming on. Hope you're going to enjoy this next hour. So I'm going to pop these on. There we go. And we're going to get on with it. So, didn't know quite what to do today, so I thought it would be rather nice if I showed you some of the setups that I personally use for some of the songs that I play at my shows. I thought this might be a really nice thing to do today. Obviously, everybody has different ideas as to what sounds and setups they use, but I thought I would show you the ones that I actually use myself. So here we go. The first piece of music is a very popular piece of music, a very popular style, and that is a little bit of Shadows. Yeah, I think everybody likes the Shadows, don't they? And this particular piece of music is Apache. Okay, so, and it's always a very popular number whenever I play this. So I thought I would show you just how I set the keyboard up to play this piece of music. So, first thing we need, of course, is a style. Now, we're very lucky because the nice people at Korg have provided us with a style called shadow pop. And that is the perfect style, not only for Shadow's music, but for actually this particular piece of music, Apache. Okay. Now, as it goes, Apache is split up into kind of 4 different sections. And of course, as in many other arranger keyboards, we have 4 variations on the rhythm. So we have a variation for each section. So variation 1 is perfect for the main section, which is this. So absolutely perfect for that. The second section, we use variation 2, and that is for this part of the tune. Variation 3 is for the third section, which is this one. And then finally, we have kind of like a middle section, which is perfect with variation 4, which is this part. Yeah, so the style that Korg have given us, Shadow Pop, is absolutely perfect for this. So we've got the style sorted. The next piece of the jigsaw that we need, of course, is the sound. Okay, now obviously it's going to be a guitar. Now, if we think about the Shadows, Hank Marvin, the guitar that Hank played was a guitar made by the guitar company called Fender, and it's a Fender Stratocaster. Okay, that's the guitar sound that Hank Marvin used. And we have on our keyboard here a very nice Fender Stratocaster sample. Okay, so if I select that, that is going to sound like this. Now that's a great guitar sound. Doesn't actually sound quite like the Shadows at this point in time. And the reason that that is like that is because that is the sound of just the straight guitar. Okay? Now, when guitarists play, they tend to use little boxes called effects pedals, and they play their guitars through various combinations of effects, and that is exactly the same as what the Shadows did. So to turn the straight guitar sound into a Shadow sound, we need to start adding effects. Okay, so we're going to now look at how we do that. Now, on a Korg Pa5x, any changes to a sound are done via the mixer. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the mixer and show you how we then can add those effects to our guitar sound. Now, the mixer on 5X is, what, in my opinion, one of the best features that are on here. It's absolutely fabulous. If anybody has used an actual mixing console, then it looks and works in exactly the same way. And if you haven't, then it's going to be an easy thing to get to grips with, because it's a tried and tested device that's been with us for many, many years. So, to access the mixer, there are 2 ways to do it. Like many things on this keyboard, 2 ways to get to the same thing. You can either press mixer on the display. And that will show what we call the small mixer, which is surrounded by the style information. And you can press this button here, which will then expand that into the large mixer. The alternative way is to press menu over here and mixer, and that will take you to exactly the same place. Now, if anybody has looked at a mixing console, then you've got lots of knobs and sliders and switches, and if you haven't used one before, it can look a little bit complicated, but it's actually easier than it looks, because these rows, they're like arranged in columns, and each column of knobs and switches relates to a specific part of the keyboard. Okay, so if we look on the screen here, the first row is all to do with upper 1. The second row is to do with the upper 2 sound, upper 3 sound, and so on and so forth. So we don't need to worry about all the knobs and switches. All we need to worry about is the ones that are in our particular section. Now, the guitar sound that I've got is on upper 1, so I'm just going to tap on upper 1, and it puts a little box around that, and that tells me that any changes that I make to this mixer are going to be just for the upper 1 section. Okay, so down the right hand side of the mixer we have a screen, and we have a button called main. That is the main part of the mixer. If we press that, then it shows us the sound that we've got. This slider control here is moving the sound from left to right. That's called pan. And the one at the bottom is the volume. And to modify anything, you just literally press that, and then you can modify it with the wheel, just like we do here. Okay, so we have got on our upper 1 section our Stratocaster guitar, which sounds like this. Okay, now the next section down on our mixer is something called EQ. Now, EQ stands for equalizer. Now, if anybody I'm sure you all have had hi-fi units, CD players, they tend to have tone controls. Yeah, you have a treble control and a bass control. Well, this is just like that, really. The one at the top is called high frequency, and that is a treble control. So if you rotate that, you're going to make the sound much brighter. And in fact, I can do that here. If I turn that up, you can see that the sound is a lot brighter. Turn it down all the way, and it's much mellower. You can highlight the bottom one, which is low frequency. That's like the bass of your tone controls on your hi-fi. If you turn that up, it increases the bass. And if you turn it down, it decreases the bass. So these controls are very useful. The one in the middle is what we call the mid-frequency, and that is, you didn't generally get this on a hi-fi, but it's the frequencies between the very high ones and the low ones, and that will have quite a dramatic effect to the sound, actually. If we turn this all the way up, see, it makes that very harsh. Or if we turn it the other way, very mellow. Okay, so with our standard sound, we don't have any changes to these. Look, they are set at 0. If I compare that with my modified sound, you will see that I've just increased the mid frequency just by a little bit. Okay, just a tiny little bit, which just makes it slightly bolder. And that's all the changes that have happened on the EQ section. Moving down, we're going to ignore the next one, which is insert effect. And we're going to go down to master effects. Now, effects, these are the things that guitarists add to their guitars to make them sound better. Okay, effects enhance a standard sound. That's what they do. And in fact, every piece of music that you listen to on a radio or on a CD, any recorded music, all that music will have gone through various effects processes to make it sound at its very, very best. Now, on here, we have up to 3 effects processors that we can have for the sound. Okay? Now, the most common effect, I guess, is reverb. And I'm sure we've all heard of that. And we've had reverb on keyboards and organs and digital pianos for many, many years. And basically what that is, if you play an instrument in a big concert hall or a cathedral, then the sound will bounce around the room, and you will hear not only the sound from the instruments, but you will hear sound bouncing off the ceiling and the walls and things like that. When we live in a small house, that doesn't happen, unless your name's Paul Carman, of course, because he's very rich. He lives in a big house, so he has a very big lounge. So Paul would certainly not need to put reverb on his keyboard. But us mere mortals who live in small houses do tend to do that. So now Master Effect is made up of 2 parts, really. You have the Master Effects setting where you choose the effect, and then you have another button underneath called Send, and that tells the instrument how much of that effect you want. So if I go back to the Master Effect on our standard sound, we have, if you look at the top, the very first effect number 1, which is switched on, is reverb. And that just gives us just a little bit of echo to the sound. If I go to the Send, underneath you can see that that is set to 24. So that is how much reverb. If I turn that down completely, we don't have any. Sounds very dry. Turn it up completely, and we have a lot. Yeah? So that makes a huge difference. So reverb is really the most common effects, and you would tend to use that pretty much all the time. Okay, well, let's go back now and have a look at my modified sound, because if you look in the screen for the standard sound, we only have reverb. Yeah, effect 2, which is underneath, and effect 3, which is here, they're both switched off. If I go to my modified sound, all of a sudden you will see that they will now spring to life, and that has added 2 further effects. The first one is called Stereo Chorus, and the second one is called Delay. Now, let's just have a little listen to that. So I'm going to switch the delay off first. So we are just going to be listening to the chorus. Okay, and if I go to the Send bit again, if I turn this right the way down, so that is no chorus at all. If I turn it up all the way, listen to the difference. Now, I'm sure that is a sound that's familiar with a lot of you. You will have heard guitars sounding like that on all sorts of recordings. It thickens the sound up, gives it a slightly tuned sound, and it's really lovely. Okay, now I'm going to switch that off. So that is the chorus, and I'm going to go to the delay now and put the delay on. And if we listen to this now, listen to what happens with the delay. You can hear the sound bouncing from one speaker to the other. And that is a very typical sound that the Shadows used, because they used a delay and a bit of chorus on their guitars. So here we go to the straight sound. And now this is the same sound, but with the chorus, the delay, and a little bit more reverb. So we're getting a bit closer. Yeah, we're still not there yet. There's still a couple of additional things that we need to do. But adding the delay in the chorus has really made a difference to that sound. So the next part we're going to look at is the bit that we ignored on the way down, and that was insert effect. Now, an insert effect is the same as a master effect, but instead of being able to control how much of it you have, it's either on or off. You have all of it or none of it. Okay? And the insert effect that I'm going to use on here, incidentally, if you're interested on how you get these, you just press the button and it shows you instantly the current effect. If you want to change it, you press the name in the top of the screen, and that will then show you all the different type of effects. And we have reverbs with lots of different reverbs, delays with lots of different delays, and so on and so forth. So lots of different effects. That's how you get them. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, I am going to, with the insert effect, use one of the amplifiers. Now, with the guitar, the amplifier that the guitar is played through is just as important as the guitar itself. Okay? And over the years, there have been lots of very famous amplifiers that guitarists use to create certain sounds with their guitar. So a lot of the sound that you get from the guitar is to do with the effects and also the amplifier that it's put through. So we are going to use our insert effect, and we're going to switch that on, and we have selected an amplifier called a Tweed amp. Now, again, this is my personal preference. This is what I think sounds the best. And I'm going to switch that off for a second. This is the sound. Well, let's just go back to the original. This is the original. This is the sound with the delay and the chorus and the reverb. Now listen to the difference when we put that through the Tweed amp. Now we are pretty much there, because that is sounding absolutely spot on now. There is one final thing we need to change, and that is the fact that currently this sound is going to be too high. When we split the keyboard and we put our style in the left hand, if I just do that very quickly, you're going to find that the guitar sound way too high. So, still on the mixer page, if we come down one stage further to bend and tuning, we press that, and this now gives us the chance to detune that guitar. Now, we have spoken in the past about detuning, and we've said that an octave, which is the distance between, say, one C and the next C, or one B and the next C, that's an octave. That's made of 12 steps. So to detune something by one octave, you need to move the tuning down by 12 steps. Better, but still a little bit high. So I'm going to move that down 24. Okay, so that is 2 octaves, 24 steps, 2 octaves. And now the guitar is in the perfect place. Okay, and that is how I get my Shadows guitar sound. Okay, now if you wanted to, because I do make one further adjustment, and that is I add a second sound to that. Okay, now if I switch the second sound on, that second sound is a sound called a tele-mute, and that sounds like this. Okay, now you wouldn't necessarily use that on its own, but you mix it with the other one, and it gives you just that lovely bit of depth to the sound. Okay, so let's just have a listen to the differences that we've done here. So this is the standard guitar sound. This was the standard guitar sound with the effects added, and now this is the final guitar sound with everything added. Fabulous. So there we go. So I think after all that talking, it's probably time for me to play Apache for you. So there we are. Rather fabulous shadow sound there. Now, I must just tell you this for all those who are sat at home and like an easy life, okay? If you don't want to have to go through that process, then again, the lovely people at Korg have provided us with all these keyboard sets in the keyboard set library. And if you go to guitar and page 4, then you have a very nice Shadows guitar sound already made for you. Not as good as mine, in my opinion, but it's not bad. Okay, but yeah, if you want to roll your sleeves up and get under the bonnet, as it were, and start having a fiddle like I've just shown you there, then you can get some really great sounds. So that's our Shadows. Okay, we're going to move on now, and another really popular style of music that I play is that of a jazz trio, piano, bass and drums. And I'm sure if you think of pieces of music like Moonglow and Fly Me to the Moon, that sort of thing, that is the sort of music that you would play with this. Okay, now for our jazz trio, as I say, it literally is what it says on the tin. It's a pianist, a bass player and a drummer. Okay, so first of all, we need our piano, and we're spoiled for choice on 5X because we have lots of lovely pianos. The one that I tend to use for jazz style music is the Italian grand piano, and it's just got the right characteristics. So this is a lovely... So I'm sure you'll all agree that that is an absolutely lovely piano sound. So next thing we need is the style. Okay, now we have a wonderful style on here called Easy Swing. Okay, and it's a great swing style with brushes playing the drums and the cymbals, and it's good because you can modify the tempo by quite a bit, so you can use it for lots of different pieces of music and it will still sound great. And the Easy Swing is this style here. Okay, so a lovely style, absolutely perfect for what we're after here. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to the mixer. This time, I'm going to make sure that I press this button, bottom right screen, and that is now going to show me the, rather than the upper 1, 2 and 3 and all that, it's going to show me the various parts that make up the style. Now, this keyboard, like many other arranger keyboards, the style is made up of 8 separate parts. And if we look on here, we have bass, drums, percussion, which is different to drums, and then 5 accompaniment parts where we have various instruments. Okay. And if we look across the top of the screen, it's telling us what instruments the keyboard has assigned to each of those parts. So in the bass is an acoustic bass. Now I'm going to set the style going. Now on here, if you can see the M and the S buttons, the M is mute. Okay, so if you press the mute button, it actually switches that part off. The S is for solo, and what the solo button does is switch all the other parts off and just enables you to just listen to that one part. So like this, we can actually listen to what each part of this style is doing. So that's our bass player. Now let's just solo the drum parts. So there's our drummer with his brushes going over the snare drums and the cymbals. So, and if you notice at the bottom of the screen, the parts that light up orange are the parts that are actually playing. Now, like many other arranger keyboards, we have 4 variations, just like we said about with the Shadows piece of music, and this is variation 1. And on variation 1, it's only using the drums and the bass, which is perfect for our jazz trio, because that's what we want. However, if we now go on to variation 2, you will then see that some more of the accompaniment parts will spring to life. So now we can see that we have accompaniment 1 and accompaniment 2 playing. Accompaniment 2 is a jazz guitar, and if we solo that, that's our jazz guitar player strumming away. Let's solo accompaniment 1, which is a piano. Let's just listen to the piano. The pianist is having an easy gig today. Yeah, and that's all he's doing. And you will find that that is true of all the accompaniment parts, because if they all did loads of stuff all at the same time, then it would be way too much. So each part does just a little bit, and they combine together to make a really, really good accompaniment at the end of it. So we've now got 4 parts playing. If I go to variation 3 now, that has now brought in accompaniment 3, which is ballad strings. Again, if we solo that, now the string players are having an easier day than the pianist, because they are literally just playing one note. But when we put all things together, it blends really nicely together. And then finally, if I go to variation 4, that has now brought in the final 2 sections, which is a sax ensemble. There's our sax ensemble. And a muted trumpet ensemble. Now that's a great style, particularly if you were doing some, say, big band music. That would be great. But for what we want, piano, bass and drums, there's way too much going on. So we need to get rid of some of these things. And in fact, you may find that you can utilize this idea for all sorts of different styles by taking various parts out and stripping the style back so it's a little bit less busy is a really good idea. So what I'm going to do, I want to take out everything other than the bass and the drums. To do that, we simply press the M button, the mute button in each section, and now we can go through our variations of rhythm. The rhythm and the bass will change slightly for each variation, but it won't bring in those extra instruments. It's keeping our trio to the 3 main players. So variation 2 has just got a slightly more drums going on. Variation 3, again, a little bit more on the drums. Variation 4, the bass player changes to a walking bass now. And the cymbals on the drums have changed. But crucially, it's still only using the 3 the instruments that we wanted. So we've still got our proper trio, which is just piano, bass and drums. So I think I will play you a nice little tune now using this setup. Here we are. You would not believe how difficult it is to play that at 2:30 on a Saturday afternoon. We normally play things like that at 1:30 in the morning in the club after we've had a few pints and stuff, you know. But I think I got away with that there. So there we go. So that is a way you can strip things back to just a jazz trio. If you want to step things up a little bit, and you could turn that back into a quartet simply by unmuting the jazz guitar. We've now added a jazz guitar player. Okay, so now we can do things like this. So that guitarist just strumming away in the background there has turned your trio into a quartet. So sounds very nice. And as I say, you can use that for a lot. You can experiment with all sorts of styles and start taking bits out, and it will transform the style to something completely new, which is great. Right, moving on. Time is marching on. It's going rather quickly, so I'm going to move on to my third and final piece of music now. Now, anybody who has seen me play at one of my shows will know that I'm a bit of an Ennio Morricone fan. Okay, and this is a rather nice piece of music written by Ennio Morricone. It's got a very elaborate title, Italian title, of course. Ennio Morricone being Italian, it loses a little bit in translation to English, because if you translate it to English, it becomes "For love one can die." Sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? But it's a lovely piece of music, and it doesn't sound like that when you say it in Italian, but I'm not very good at Italian, so I'm not going to even try. But what I'm going to do is show you that this is made up of 3 different sounds. The first sound that I use for this is a combination of piano and strings. Once again, if we go to our mixer, make sure we're on the page that shows us the upper 1, 2 and 3 and so on and so forth, and you will see that the piano is a German grand, which is this one here. That's of course a Steinway. Nice and bold piano, lovely sound, so ideal for what we want here. And my go-to strings, the Ballad Strings DNC. Now, you may remember the last webinar that I did here, we discussed how to put sustain on various instruments. I'm not going to go through that process today because we've already done that, but just to remind everybody very quickly, you go to the menu button, you go to track controls, and then you choose whichever section you want, upper 1, 2, 3 or whatever, and you modify the release time, which is this here. And if we look here, we can see that the German grand has got a release time of 63 and the strings have got a release time of 40, and that is giving us the sustain that enhances the piano and the strings. So when I play the introduction, because this is for the introduction, the style, by the way, is just a standard 8-beat. Here is the introduction. So just having that little bit of sustain on the piano and the strings just makes that work really nicely. Okay, second sound is an oboe. Now, this is slightly interesting because I am not using one of the standard factory sounds. On this, I'm actually using one of the legacy sounds. Now, legacy sounds are sounds that have been with us for a few years on previous models, things like the PA4X, PA3X, so on and so forth. Now, don't think that because they're legacy sounds that they're not as good as the latest sounds, because they are. There are some wonderful sounds in there. Okay, and the oboe that I use, as you can see on the screen, is the classic oboe, and the reason I use that one is because I think it's just got the right sound characteristics for this piece of music. And incidentally, in the left hand, I'm using another technique that I showed you last time, which was how to put 2 sounds in the left hand. And here I've put that German grand piano with the sustain and the strings with the sustain, but in the left hand now. again, I won't go through the process other than to tell you that it's menu, keyboard ensemble, and you use the range function to tell the upper one. Don't forget, the upper 1, 2 and 3 only become upper sounds when you actually have the split selected. Without the split selected, they play over the entire keyboard. So you use the range section to select the oboe to play in the right hand and the piano and strings to play down in the left hand. So that's what we did. So there we have our oboe with piano and strings in the left hand, and that legacy oboe, the classical oboe, is lovely. Third and final sound within this is the string sound. Now, you can't play Ennio Morricone music unless you've got a really good string sound. So the string sound that I'm using here is a combination of 2 sounds. The ballad strings, my go-to strings, which I've said several times, are my favourite string sounds on here, really, for this type of music. But again, so there is the ballad string sound. Lovely sound. But again, I've paired that up on upper 2 with another legacy sound, and this time the legacy sound is movie strings 3, and that has a totally different characteristic. It's a bit harsher. It's got a bit of vibrato where they're bowing across the strings. And a bit of a thinner sound. Okay? Both on their own sound really, really nice. Put the two together and you have the most amazing string sound. I'm sure you'll agree that is a wonderful string sound. So I am going to combine all that together, and I'm going to play you a little bit of this, not all of it, because I want to show you one further thing. Okay, but I'm just going to play you, say, the first half. Now I'm going to stop there, okay? The reason I'm stopping there is because I want to just show you a little trick that you can do with the pads, okay? Now, pads are very, very useful things. Each style that you select has got 4 pads assigned to it, which are suitable for that style. And pads, they play little riffs, piano or arpeggios, guitar strums maybe, lots and lots of different types of things. For example, if I go to a Latin American rhythm and just choose a bossa nova rhythm, There's our bossa nova rhythm. The pads that have been assigned to that, pad 1 is doing that. Pad 2 is doing that. Pad 3 is playing a little piano riff and a little guitar riff on there. And the whole idea is that you can add them to your rhythm. So I've got my rhythm going now like this. I can now add any or indeed all of these pads to that rhythm. And every single style has got 4 unique pads assigned to it. All of course have been created by Korg. They're all in the keyboard already for you. You don't need to do anything. However, you can of course create your own. Okay. Now I'm going to just show you a couple of the pads that I've created, and then I'm going to show you a little trick that you can use, and in a way that not a lot of people tend to use the pads, but is a really good way. So the first pad that I've created is just very simple. It's a wind chime. That's all it does. But that is really effective when you're playing a tune and at various points in the tune you press that. It's a very popular sound that you will hear on lots of recordings. Another pad is this one here. This is a cymbal roll, which is just made up of lots of different cymbals, gradually getting louder. Okay, very useful if you're doing orchestral music. The third one is the similar thing, but using timpani drums this time. And of course, if you want great effect, you can use the timpani and the cymbals together. Brilliant for the ending of something like a show tune or a film score or something like that. So that is the sort of thing that you can create yourself with the pad. But what I'm going to show you now is a way to use this as a bit of it's a bit of multi-tracking. Okay, now multi-tracking is a technique that I've been using for many years. Most arranger keyboards have something called a sequencer on board, and the sequencer allows you to record up to 16 different instruments, each playing different things. Okay, and you can really build up some big arrangements using that. But this is a way of doing something very similar, but without having to bother with the sequencer. And what you're doing, you're using a pad to record rather than just a wind chime or a cymbal or an arpeggio. You're actually recording a melodic line. Okay, so going back to our piece of music, when the oboe is playing, that, if you listen to the original, and I spend a lot of time listening to original scores and trying to figure out what instruments are doing what and where, there is a string section playing this over the top of the oboe at the same time. And so on. It goes on for 12 bars, okay? But it's doing that at the same time as the oboe. Now, if you're playing the oboe with your right hand, the chords with your left hand, you're going to need a third hand to play that string part, okay? And that's where the pad comes in. So what I've done here, I'll play you just a little bit of it. This is the pad that I've created, and it's a string sound, and it is playing that part of that little piece of music, that little riff that I've just played. And so on. So very quickly I'm going to show you just how you create that. So to record a pad, you press the record button here on the panel, and then you select from the screen new pad, and then we see this. Okay, and there are various settings on here. Now the first setting that you need to do, and you need to do this very first, because once you've recorded something you can't change it, is the length. Okay, so if I press that, as I said, this was 12 bars long. I actually wrote the music out, worked it out, it's 12 bars long. So you set your pad length to 12. Okay, underneath there it's telling us that it's 4/4 time. You can change that if you want to, but this is 4/4, so we don't need to. I'm going to press the metronome button, so I get a metronome ticking away so I can keep in time when I'm playing. The beats per minute, that is the speed. Well, the default setting is 120. This tune is set at 65, so I'm going to turn that down to 65. A couple of others to change. You can ignore the rest of them. The first one is resolution. Now what that does, that actually helps you play in time, because if it's set to high, then wherever you press a note is where the note will be. But you have various settings, various smaller notes that you can have, and the smallest note in this string line, when I wrote it out, was a quaver, which is an 8th note. So if I set that to quaver, what will happen, any note that I play that's slightly out, it will automatically adjust it and bring it in to the nearest quaver. So it will correct my bad timing, basically. Okay? And the only other thing we need to worry about here is the sound, because the default sound is a drum kit. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to change it up to my go-to strings, ballad strings. And that's us ready to record. What will happen now, when I press the play button in player 1, it will give me a 1-bar counting, and then I will play, and it will record the string part. So here we go. And so on. You get to the end and you switch off, and then you can actually play that back if you want to. There it is. Now, you could, at this point in time, save it, but there is one further thing that we need to do, because there are two types of pads. There are pads that loop around and play continuously, and there are pads that only play once. And we need to tell this that we only want it to play once. And to do that, we press the menu button, and we press the pad type button. And if you notice on here, it says loop. Okay? Well, we want to change that. We want to press on there and change that to one shot, because if you leave it on loop, what will happen, as soon as it gets to the end, it will then play over again, and we don't want that to happen. We only want it to play once in the part of the music that it's designed for. And that's it. That's all we need to do. To save it, you press the buttons in the top right hand corner, save pad. You can give it a name, and you can choose where in the keyboard you want to save it to. And that's it. So I think, to finish off with, I think I ought to play this piece of music for you so you can see exactly what it's going to sound like. And there we are. So I hope you've all enjoyed that. I hope that's been a little bit useful, giving you some ideas, a little bit of food for thought. And now I shall hand you back to the man with the big lounge, Mr. Paul Carman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks very much, Steve. To be honest, I found that fascinating. I've enjoyed the last hour and 15 minutes. I think it's always interesting to listen to different ways that people approach different things, and his idea of using the pad there as a phrase. By the way, we had one quick question. You left it as a drum type. That's so that it didn't get affected by the chords.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, 100%.
I meant to say that.
Yeah, so, well, they all spotted it. They're all on the ball.
Yes, if you change it from a drum to an accompaniment, or
It will follow the chord change.
follow the chord,
Yeah,
and you don't
yeah.
want that to happen.
Yeah. So just to make that clear, when Steve did the pad, he left it as a drum pad, although he wasn't using drum sounds. The when you set it to a drum pad, it won't then respond to any chord changes, because obviously if it did respond to the chord changes, it would immediately change the notes that Steve's played in. So yeah, everybody who spotted that, well done. And you're probably the people who are going to win the quiz as well. Now, all I want to do, just before we just sign off for the day, a few things. First of all, again, a very special thanks to Korg UK for kindly supplying us at Keyboard World with the services of Steve for today. And a very special thanks to you, Steve, because he has done sort of 7 hours in the car to be with us today, and we really appreciate that. And wherever you're watching in the world, I'm sure your weather's a little bit better than ours. During the course of that webinar, we've gone from thunderstorm to now brilliant sunshine, and I no doubt there's some snow on the way as well. But yeah, those little Korg goodies, and they are, I know we joked about them a little bit at the beginning of the webinar, but they are actually fantastic products. I was tempted to keep them to myself, but I did say we'd give them away, so reluctantly. All we need you to do is to email me with the answer to this question. Now, my email address is paul@keyboardworld.co.uk. So that's paul@keyboardworld.co.uk. And the question is very simple. We want to know the first ever product that Korg manufactured. I will tell you it was in 1963 when I was the ripe old age of 1. And I want to know what the type of product was. And the second part is, what was it called? Now, if you can email me the answer to that, we'll give you a week to email in. I know you can Google it, but email in, and then we'll draw 3 names out of the hat, and we'll get your prizes on their way to you. Also, just a quick reminder that myself and Andy are back on live Tuesday afternoon next week, and that's not so much a product webinar. That'll be back to some little hints and tips on musicality, and I think we've got some things this time that you should all be practicing if you want to improve your playing. So from all of us here to all of you, wherever you are, thanks ever so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.